I'm an extrovert and I love meeting people, and I just love going out to the markets and the different events and meeting new customers. And it's really enabled me to expand my network of other just business owners in the community who I've never really interacted with in any substantive way. I've never given, unfortunately, a whole lot of thought to local business owners or where exactly I spent my money and who I patronized and why. And this has really opened my eyes up to just the world of what it means to own a small business and just the hustle and just the amount of work that's involved in that.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Real Pasadena Podcast. This show is dedicated to sharing the experiences of local business owners and inspiring the next generation of entrepreneurs here in Pasadena, Maryland, and beyond. My guest on this episode is Jen Ventola, owner of the Bundt House. Jen started her journey as a cottage food baker, navigating the complexities of Maryland's regulations while passionately crafting delicious treats. From winning blue ribbons in the Anne Arundel County Fair for her pound cake to popular items like cinnamon rolls and cookies, Jen's commitment to quality and compliance shines through. In our interview, Jen shares her experiences with cottage food laws, her favorite flavor combinations, and her dedication to sourcing the best ingredients. This episode is sponsored by Buxton Media Productions, your one-stop shop for video production, podcasting, and editing services. Whether you're looking to produce a promotional video for your business, create more consistency with your social media content, or even start your own podcast, Buxton Media Productions has everything you need to get started. They even have a local studio right here in Pasadena where we're recording this podcast. To learn more, visit them online at buxtonmediaproductions.com. All right, well, Jen, thank you for being here on the podcast. Appreciate you taking time to sit down and talk to me about your experience and your story. So let's start there. New business.
Yes.
Bundt House. Started less than a year ago.
Yes.
Why?
Well, I've always just really loved baking, and I started baking with regularity when I was around middle school age, and I've always just loved everything related to food and baking. I'm a big time foodie. I love trying new things. I love reading recipes. I love learning about different types of cuisine, and I love baking as well. So I've always been the dessert person for any type of event for family and friends. And anytime I brought a dessert anywhere, most of the time it's a big hit. I get lots of compliments, and people will suggest, oh, you should start a bakery. I've never really been interested in starting like a full commercial bakery business. I didn't want to do that full time and have to deal with kind of the headache of owning your own kind of commercial business and, all the permits and licensing that go along with that. And I didn't want anything to take the fun out of baking for me. So I always just kind of brushed them off. And then actually last year, my daughter, who also loves baking, started a little kind of temporary side business to raise money to go to camp. And it took off really well and just got a huge response. And she was super happy doing it. And so she actually just really inspired me to finally start just a little side hustle of my own. And
That's
kind of the
pretty
rest
cool.
is history.
Yeah. So are you self-taught?
Yes, I don't have any official, or professional culinary training. I actually, for a time, wanted to go to culinary school after high school. That just didn't pan out. I ended up in a totally different career path. My day job has nothing to do with baking whatsoever. I just ended up continuing to do it just kind of as a hobby, as stress relief, as something that I love being busy with my hands. So just something that I could do and busy myself with to decompress at home. But yeah, I don't have any formal training. I just read a lot of recipes, and I spent many years watching the Food Network when that was a thing.
I love watching the Food Network.
Yes.
As a creative person, myself, I feel for me is more cooking is my outlet.
Gotcha.
I like to cook. Baking, I feel, is more of a science. Would you agree with that, where you have to very specifically measure, or do you just experiment and kind of see how things turn out sometimes?
Definitely. Well, it's a little bit of both, I think. So baking, you are very correct in that baking is definitely more precise. There is an exact science to, gluten structure and rise and browning and caramelization and, the optimal texture and appearance of baked goods. And that requires some pretty specific measurements of the basic components of a recipe, like the flour and the leavening agent and the fat and everything. So, and I actually really enjoy that element. I've gotten to like cooking more over the years, but at first I didn't even really like cooking. I only liked baking because I am a very precise person. I am a rule follower. I like having instructions. I like having a recipe to follow. Like that is part of the fun for me, is really just is looking at and logging and following a recipe. I've expanded a bit more over the years into cooking and gotten a little more creative with different flavor profiles and glazes and stuff, and being a little more creative with what I do, in as much as one can when following, a specific scientific formula. But the short answer is yes, I do agree that baking is definitely more precise and more easy to mess up. And I that's kind of the appeal for me.
Yeah.
I like doing things right. And I like, there being a formula to how to do something right.
Yeah, I'm usually very structured, but when I go to cooking and I don't really measure things. And then when I bake things, they don't always come out with the right texture or the right whatever it might be. And even when you say like, oh, the fats and the flours and I have no idea what you're talking about. But as long as it tastes good for me, I'm like, okay, that's fine. So what are some of the things you like to bake the most?
I actually really enjoy yeast breads, including like the sweetened yeast dough recipes, like the cinnamon rolls that I brought. I love the rise. I love watching the dough in my mixer as, the gluten develops and the dough just totally kind of changes in appearance and composition and texture. I love the smell of a yeast bread baking, and I love eating bread. I am an unabashed carbaholic. I love anything with carbs in it, and again, just breads, just from start to finish, I just find really soothing and delicious and so versatile. And so I love baking those. And, my name is the Bundt House after all. So I do love making bundt cakes. I love mini bunts, and I love the different flavor combinations that you can build from just a really good basic pound cake recipe.
So I know what pound cake is, I think. I know what it tastes like, and it's delicious. What exactly is a bundt cake, and why is it so different?
Gotcha. So a bundt cake is often pound cakes are baked in bundt pans, but not all bunts are pound cakes. So bundt really refers to the pan.
Okay.
It's that fluted pan with the kind of with the hole in the center, kind of like a donut hole essentially.
Got it.
And that pan is structured in such a way that since there is that gap in the center, you have more surface area in the pan to brown like a really dense cake batter, and it can cook more evenly. Because if you were to think about cooking a cake batter in like a really tall and deep cake pan with no hole in the center, it's just a full circle. A batter like a pound cake or something similar that has so many heavy ingredients. A traditional pound cake recipe is a full pound each of butter and flour and sugar and eggs. So that's going to make a really, really dense and heavy cake. And if you if you bake it in a solid pan, it's going to be really undercooked in the middle and it's going to deflate. So the magic of the bundt pan or any kind of fluted pan is that tunnel provides like surface area for additional cooking, and it can help that cake cook more evenly. Bundt really refers to the pan that it's cooked in, where a pound cake is the style of cake in the recipe. And a lot of times they intersect because, like I said, pound cakes cook the best in a pan like that has that hole in the middle.
Yeah, I had no idea. I learned something new today. And again, science.
I can talk about bunts all day.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about. I know you said your daughter kind of inspired you to start the business, but you have a full-time career.
Yes.
Your mother.
Yes.
Just those two things alone,
Right.
I'm sure keep you very busy. What was the what's the goal with starting the business? Do you think you'll eventually leave your career and do this, or is it truly just kind of a passion project?
This truly is a passion project. I have no plans at this moment to take this full time. My day job has really good benefits and a lot of stability in that, and really good retirement. None of which I've found to be benefits of self-employment at home. So I'm definitely not letting go of those aspects of it. And I really this is kind of something to that I started really kind of to help us hit some financial goals. Even though my husband and I both have good, really good day jobs. All three of our kids do attend a private school, which is our main financial priority right now. So, but with 3 kids, that's it can get a little pricey.
Sure.
So really, this is just kind of just to supplement a bit and to help us hit some financial goals, and to put get a little more aggressive with saving and that sort of thing. And really, and again, just for the fun of it, and I'm an extrovert, and I love meeting people, and I just love going out to the markets and the different events and meeting new customers, and it's really enabled me to expand my network of other just business owners in the community who I've never really interacted with in any substantive way. I've never given unfortunately, a whole lot of thought to local business owners, or where exactly I spent my money, and who I patronized and why. And this has really opened my eyes up to just the world of what it means to own a small business, and just the hustle and just the amount of work that's involved in that. So that's been a blessing to just really have my eyes open to that aspect of it and make new connections.
Yeah, it's exciting. So when it comes to growing the business, right? Because it's a home-based business. Yes. You have to get out there and sell. Like, people aren't coming to your storefront. So what has your approach kind of been to get out there and meet clients, or customers, I should say, and then to connect with these business owners?
So I'm very active on social media, and that helps a lot, posting in what I hope to be engaging content. I've gotten a pretty good response, so at least I hope that most of it is engaging. Posting fun facts about baking and ingredients, and offering some really good seasonal flavor combinations has helped a lot to get my name out there. Posting in the hyper-local Facebook groups has been really, really great for exposure. I love the Pasadena Eats Next Door group and Lakeshore Pasadena group and everything. Those groups have really, really helped me to gain some local exposure. Other than social media, the biggest way that I've been able to connect with other community members and get my name out there is setting up shop at local events and farmers markets. I've had a great response from there. I've done a couple craft fairs at local high schools. I'll be at Chesapeake High School on the 16th for their craft fair, and I have several dates booked at a local farm market in Crownsville and other events throughout the season. So again, between social media and the markets and vendor events, that's what's really helped me to grow.
Nice. I can see how those would pair well together too. And do you do a lot of social media when you're at the events as well?
Not really. I am not very good. I've gotten better, but I really struggled at first with reels and stories and how to effectively record and post those, especially live. I'm just not very good at it yet.
Well, it's funny
I think I'm getting there, but honestly, I had never been on Instagram at all. I'd only used Facebook. I started Instagram when I started my business, so it was a kind of a learning curve for me. especially as an elder millennial. It sounds weird to say. I just hadn't really used it before. So, learning what kind of content is most interesting to potential customers, what would get the most reach is kind of, an ever evolving process for me.
Sure.
And I'm working with a friend who is helping me with some social media strategy, which has been very, very helpful. So
Nice. Well, you have a great product to kind of build around. I think food in general is just, people love food, right?
yes, everybody loves desserts. So,
yeah. But ironically, I think the first time where I saw you and met you was at one of these craft fairs. But I remember seeing it was either a live or a recording. It was a vertical video that you had done. And that was the first time that I actually saw you. So
cool.
Just to give you some feedback there, I mean,
great.
I'm
glad somebody watched it.
And it's real, right?
Yes, it is.
Gives you a true picture into the people behind, which I think has been a big shift away from corporate advertising, marketing. People want to see the real people behind it. So hopefully that's in your favor. What are some of the challenges that you've faced in getting started with your business? What's up, Pasadena? I'm James Bowerman, your Pasadena Realtor and host of the Real Pasadena Podcast. As a lifelong resident, I've experienced firsthand what makes our town such an amazing place to live, work, and play. As a local real estate agent, having the opportunity to serve so many wonderful people in our community is truly a great honor. If you're thinking about making a move, let me show you how my knowledge and experience can help you achieve your real estate goals. To learn more or to schedule a private consultation, please visit realcreativegroup.com.
So, probably the biggest challenge that I've found so far is really making sure that I'm compliant with Maryland cottage food law. Cottage food law applies to all home-based food businesses, and there's a lot of misinformation out there about what it really means to run a cottage food business in Maryland, and the different regulations that we're held to. It can be very confusing and very cumbersome to try to navigate the regulations, especially as, health departments vary from county to county. There are statewide regulations that govern cottage foods, but again, you also need to be aware of the health department and what they may require in your locality. And cottage food bakers are very restricted in what they can sell and how they can sell it, because as a cottage food business, we are not operating from a home-based kitchen. We are not inspected by the health department. We do not need actually any kind of license specifically to sell. But that does mean that since we are given a lot of liberty in being able to, again, essentially run a business from our home kitchen without any type of inspection or permitting, that means that we are restricted to foods that are the least likely to get somebody sick. So I can't sell anything that requires refrigeration, nothing with fresh fruit, nothing that essentially that the state of Maryland Department of Health deems potentially hazardous. So that means, those strawberry shortcakes, chocolate-covered strawberries, cheesecakes, all those delicious desserts that contain dairy that so many people love, I'm not allowed to sell as a cottage food baker. Now, that doesn't mean that people don't still do it. So that's and that brings another challenge. That there's a lot of bakers, not just here, but everywhere, that either kind of don't know about cottage food law, or they do know, but they decide it's kind of too cumbersome to try to keep up with, which I totally get. But then that makes the playing field kind of that much harder to really break into when you're trying really hard to do everything according to the law and by cottage food standards, when you're really sticking to what you can and can't sell, and not everybody is. So that can be challenging, but at the end of the day, I try to just really keep my nose down and just make sure that I am selling products that are compliant and that I can rest easy, you know, knowing that I am following the regulations and following the spirit, not just the letter, but really the spirit of cottage food laws, in that really taking care to sell stuff that is, you know, stable at room temperature and that is the least likely to, you know, to make my customers sick.
Sure.
And the least likely to carry any kind of foodborne illness. You know, that's really important to me. You know, I take, especially since I'm selling food, I take the safety of my customers very, very seriously, and I want to do things the right way. But again, it can be really challenging to navigate some of those laws, and then to, you know, get excited about wanting to sell something and add to the menu, and then figure out that it's something that you're not allowed to sell, or something that you need to send to a food lab for testing before you can sell it. Everything also has to have a very, very specific and detailed label. All of my labels have to include all ingredients and sub-ingredients. So if I put sprinkles on something, I have to list out every sub-ingredient in those sprinkles as well. So again, I can see why people might think, "Oh, forget that. I'm not doing all that."
You're doing it by the book,
right? Exactly. Sure. But it's important for me. Again, you know, back to me liking to follow a recipe. I like structure, I like rules, I like following those rules, and that part can be really kind of challenging and exhausting at times when I'm, you know, staying up really late before a market event, making sure everything is labeled correctly. But again, at the end of the day, I can rest easy knowing that I am following all relevant laws and I'm doing everything in my power to ensure the safety of my customers.
Yeah,
so
well, that's really good to know. I feel. Well, for anybody who's listening who's thinking this might be a side hustle, passion project that I want to get into, it's good that they're hearing this. I think there's a lot of things that we get so excited and ambitious about as entrepreneurs. And like, I'm going to go do this thing. And then you run into, of course, all the rules, the regulations, the hurdles, and, you know, and a lot of those things you can push through it, and then you're going to find success on the other side, like you're seeing, right? Other people might not have that drive are going to give up and quit. But I think that's the sign of a true entrepreneur, is somebody who's not going to give up. They're going to push through and figure it out. So I respect that. And you're a blue ribbon winner, correct?
Yes.
So tell me more about that.
Yeah. So I entered several baking categories at the county fair this past summer. And one of which was my pound cake. I entered just my basic buttermilk pound cake into the baked goods, the pound cake category at the Anne Arundel County Fair, and I won the blue ribbon, which was just really awesome. And it was very shortly after I started the business, so that was, you know, kind of a huge boost of confidence to right off the bat know that I was selling a quality product. And I know, you know, taste is very subjective, but that was, again, just still, you know, that was still a nice boost of affirmation that I do know what I'm doing. And, you know, if the imposter syndrome, you know, every now and then starts to kick in, I'm like, okay, well, at least one person, you know, thinks my pound cake is worthy of a blue ribbon. And, I was thrilled to win that. So, and then I also placed in the yeast bread category. My white sandwich bread won second place ribbon. And my daughter actually won an award for her chocolate chip cookies in the teen baking category as well. So that was just a really neat day to go to the fair as a family. And, you know, I didn't get any notification of it. You know, I had dropped my stuff off for judging earlier in the week, and no one, this is the first time I'd ever entered anything. No one calls you and says, you know, congratulations, you've won or anything. I just, you know, when we got to the fair as attendees, which we do every year, we just went back to the exhibit hall, and I saw my pound cake there with a blue ribbon on it, and we quickly snapped a picture. So,
awesome.
So that was great. And I'm looking forward to entering more items this year.
Defending state champ. Huh?
Yes,
county
exactly.
Champ. Yeah, we love going to the county fair and checking it out.
Great.
It's funny sometimes because some of the vegetables have turned a little
ripe and things. And you're like, oh, that one, I think it's rotting. But
even some of the baked goods, at least, especially like some of the stuff with icing, it's a little
they get a little sour.
It's a little worse for wear by the time the actual fair weekend rolls around. But
nice. Well, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Is pound cake probably the number one favorite, or do you have a top seller that people like to go to?
Honestly, my pound cake has been very well received, but from people that order, cinnamon rolls are some of the most popular. I sell out of cinnamon rolls at almost every event where I set up, and cookies. I make a gluten-free almond cookie that really kind of took off gangbusters. People really, really like that one too. So even though it won a blue ribbon, the pound cake is not quite my best seller, although it does receive really good feedback whenever anybody orders it or purchases it at an event. But as far as my top sellers, really the cinnamon rolls and the cookies. Oh, and some other yeast spreads for Thanksgiving. I offered potato rolls, and those were hugely popular. So my
kids love a good potato roll.
Right. And so they got really, really great feedback. It's not practical for me to offer them all the time just because of the amount of space they take up and the timing and all that jazz. But I do plan to offer them for holidays. I am offering them for Easter. So they'll be kind of like a more limited pop-up item. But yeah, those really, really took off. I was surprised at how at the response that those received at Thanksgiving. I sold more of those than I did. People pre-ordered those more than they did the cakes and desserts.
Yeah, I love that you're proactively thinking about like the holidays and how you can shift your baking towards that. I'm gonna show my ignorance again here. Is a potato roll actually made out of potatoes?
It does have potato in the dough. Yeah. So potato starch does some magical things for bread dough. It really, really helps absorb and hold on to and retain some moisture. And the starches react with the yeast and the flour in such a way that makes it just really, really fluffy. And because the potato starch retains moisture, it stays soft for several days. It goes stale a lot slower than a traditional yeast bread would. But there is mashed potato in the dough of a potato roll.
Very, very interesting.
Yes. And lots of butter. They're delicious.
Yeah. So by the time this podcast comes out, I think we'll miss Easter.
Gotcha.
But what else is on the horizon? What are some of the seasonal things that people can look forward to maybe this summer that going to be a specialty item, or what's in the future? Yeah,
definitely. So I'm already kind of gearing up for graduation. I do offer cupcakes with very, very, I'm not a decorator. So my cupcakes have just, kind of a very simple icing swirl, but I will be offering those in class colors. I've already had people inquire about graduation desserts, which is kind of crazy. I also plan on, I love offering desserts with kind of seasonal flavors. When summertime rolls around, I think of fruit. I think those like delicious stone fruits like peaches and plums and nectarines and berries. And again, with fruit, I have to be careful with what I offer, because only certain types of fruits I'm allowed to cook with, the ones that have a low pH, which means they're much less likely to harbor bacteria or to harbor bacterial growth rather. So I'm thinking of like a blueberry lemon scone with the flavors of summer, like a peach cobbler bundt cake toward the end of the summer. For 4th of July, I'm thinking of offering a bundt cake that has kind of like a red, white, and blue pinwheel swirl, or cupcakes that have red, white, and blue icing. I'm thinking of a key lime pound cake, for summertime as well. So yeah, during the summer, I'm really focusing on those kind of really bright, fresh, fruity flavors that people like, and maybe an ice cream flavor inspired menu too. A current pound cake I'm offering, inspired by my daughter. It was her choice for her birthday month, is Neapolitan. So we've got the chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry, and that got me thinking of summer and what other kind of ice cream inspired flavors I could offer, like mint chocolate chip or Rocky Road, or chocolate chip cookie dough, those kind of things. So
Yeah.
my gears are always turning, thinking of flavor combinations that would work really well in a bundt cake or a mini bundt or a scone.
Yeah. As far as like sourcing ingredients, what does that look like?
So I get most of my ingredients from BJ's, at least the bulk ones. So the flour, I am a diehard King Arthur flour person. That's the only flour I use, and luckily BJ's carries it in bulk, so I buy it there. Same goes with my, sugar and vegetable oil and cocoa powder and that sort of thing. As far as eggs, I buy those in bulk as well. And flavorings, I order directly from a flavoring company that makes really, really good quality flavorings. Same goes with vanilla. I have kind of a high-end brand that I prefer to use. And I order that online too. So again, like the basic ingredients, the flour, the sugar, the butter, and everything, I buy at kind of a wholesale club, and then the other items I source online.
Sure. Mm-hmm. So I know you mentioned you're a big podcast listener.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any specific podcasts or other resources that have really helped inspire, or not even inspire, but just help you to learn and grow as you've taken this journey?
Yeah, so I listen to all types of different podcasts, but the two I think that have been most influential when it comes to the Bundt House specifically, as the first one is, or I would say three. The first is called, it's Gastropod. It's kind of like a food documentary type of podcast that their tagline is something along the lines of looking at food through the lens of history and science. So they'll pick one type of food item or meal or type of cuisine and just take a real deep dive into it, into the history and the science of it, and what makes it so popular and what makes it so great. So I love listening to that podcast. The Splendid Table is kind of more like just like a soothing balm type of podcast, just for people who really love food. The host is really, really engaging and a great interviewer, and talks to mainly famous chefs and cookbook authors. So I definitely get just inspiration and just a reinforcement of just like the love of food and what it does for people and relationships and get-togethers, and just the importance of food in different cultures, and how that informs a huge part of many people's cultural upbringing as well. When I'm looking for kind of just like business inspiration and a kick in the pants, there is a podcast called Baking for Business that is hosted by a pretty popular baking influencer, and who really kind of grew a cottage food business into, I think, I don't know exactly how much she pulls in, but a much larger, a really true like digital empire. That's not necessarily what my aspiration is at this point, but it is, and sometimes it can get a little corny and a little too kind of rah-rah motivational for me, but it does. But again, if I'm looking for that kind of motivation, it is really inspiring. And she does have some really good tips just about social media and expanding your reach, and business tips specific to home bakers. So it's a very niche podcast that works well.
You have a favorite baker or a chef out there, maybe on the Food Network, or just anybody who inspires you?
Yeah, so I remember watching a pastry chef named Gail Gand when I was growing up. She was on the Food Network. I loved watching her show. I don't even know if she's around anymore, but like really, when I think of somebody like going way back that just really developed and continually reinforced my love for baking, Gail Gand would be the biggest inspiration. As far as currently, there is, and this is terrible, I'm not thinking of her last name, but there is a show now called Zoe Bakes, and the chef Zoe makes just the most beautiful, delicious looking desserts. So I love watching her show, and other bakers I follow, the Preppy Kitchen and the Sugar Geek show. those are some really great online baking influences that I follow. Also, Sally's Baking Addiction. Sally is a very, very popular baking and recipe blogger that has just some really great, solid recipes. So those three are usually the first I go to when I'm looking for inspiration and a good recipe.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I really admire what you've done and that you kind of understand. I've talked about this before on the podcast as far as not everyone's looking to create this huge corporation,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's nothing wrong with having a side hustle or this passion that you have and gearing it specifically towards, maybe it's like where we want to create additional income so we can go on, 3 or 4 vacations, whatever it might be. I really do respect and appreciate that. There's a book called The E-Myth, which is specifically in there. There's a story about a pie baker and how she goes from the just baking pies into trying to build a business and the struggles with that. Obviously not the path you're trying to take, but it definitely made me put some similarities together. But this, what you've brought here, looks amazing, and I can't wait to taste it. I know my kids are gonna want to eat one of these cinnamon rolls. But I really appreciate you being on the show today, and
Appreciate you having me.
Of course. And for people who are listening, where can they connect with you? How can they follow you?
Right, so my website is bundthousebakes.com. Super easy to remember, and on that website there will be a link to my Facebook and Instagram accounts. So on Facebook, my name is the Bundt House Pasadena, Maryland. That was another challenge. I did have a Facebook page when I first started that was just called the Bundt House. That got hacked about a month after I started it. So that page still exists and I can't get to it or manage it. But my current Facebook page is the Bundt House Pasadena, Maryland, and on Instagram I am Bundt_house_MD as in Maryland. So I'm very active with the business on social media, so I encourage you to follow me there. And my website always has my current menu and a list of events where I will be setting up throughout the season. So you can find all the information you need from any one of those 3 places.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thank you, Jen. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Real Pasadena Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Real Pasadena is your local online source where we cover the real news and highlight the real people impacting our community. Be sure to check us out at realpasadenamd.com, where you'll also find all the show notes and additional episodes of the podcast. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, be well, my friends.